Hello and welcome back. Welcome to December the 1st and the first day of the Master of Malt Drinks by the Dram Whisky Advent Calendar. So this is an exciting moment. I've never actually had one of these Advent calendars before. So high hopes, because I am a long-standing customer of Master of Malt and I've bought a lot of 30ml samples over the years. Let's get this sleeve off. I don't think we need that anymore. Track down day number 1 and see what we've got. This is where I ripped the box in half and ruined the whole thing. Oh, yep, ripped it. Oh no, fallen at the first hurdle. There we go, job done. This is exciting because day number 1 is something that I've not only never had before, I've never actually heard of this. It is Aerolite Lindsay, 10-year-old, the character of Islay Whisky Company. It's 46%, so that's a good sign. And that's all it says on here. I might have to look this one up because I honestly have never heard of this and I don't know what it is. But what I do want to say is that these aren't going to be full reviews on any of these whiskies in the Whisky Advent Calendar. They're just going to be brief, informal tastings more than anything else. Probably not going to give grades. I'm just going to dump it in the glass, enjoy it just as you are at home, and we'll see what we get. Yep, definitely peated whiskey. Let's get it in the glass. So actually not quite as peated as I first thought when I opened that, but it is definitely peated. And there's also a really nice coastal salinity to this as well. So the peat on this one, it's definitely quite peaty. It's not in the realms of Ardbeg or anything like that, but it's a bit of a hard to define peat. On the one hand it's quite refined, but on the other it's also quite a dirty peat, which does remind me a little bit of Ardbeg, because in Ardbeg you've got that very sharp but very ashy and fumey sort of peat, and you've sort of got something a little bit like that in here, although a little bit of a milder version, even though the ABV is the same as the Ardbeg 10-year-old. But what I will say is that I really like the nose on this one. It's got a good peatiness to it, and it's got lots of character, and it's fairly complex as well. You've also got a really nice minerality on the nose, sort of some oily, mineral, slightly chalky and hard notes, and also a little bit of a wet wool note on the nose. There's obvious signs of youth on the nose. You can tell that this is not an old whiskey. I'm actually getting some notes in this whiskey which I'd describe as slightly starchy. And this is something that often kills a lot of young whiskies for me, a lot of young Islay whiskey in particular. When you get that certain note where it reminds you of the water that you drain off after you've been cooking pasta or spaghetti, that starchiness is something that if you have a lot of, I really don't like. And I think it's one of the obvious signs that a whiskey is really quite young or not very well matured. But in this whiskey it's only a little hint of that starchiness, and I don't actually mind it. I think it works quite well because it's offset by these other notes. You've got a nice lemoniness, and in particular there's a note in this whiskey which I would describe as chili pepper. And I don't mean like black pepper or like a chili con carne. It's actually the smell of a freshly sliced hot chili, like a proper bird's eye chili or something like that. And that note in particular, it's got so much of it, probably more fresh chili pepper in this than any other whiskey that I've ever tried. And it just offsets that starchiness so well. It's actually a really well balanced peaty nose. I can't remember if I said this, but there's also quite a lemon note in there as well. So let's try the palate, see if it can follow up on what we've got from the nose. I was a little bit concerned about this one when I got this one out of the box, and I saw that not so much the name Aerolite Lindsay, I think I've no idea what that means. Sounds like a female 1920s aviator. But the fact that this whisky is from the Character of Islay Whisky Company, independent bottled. Not always a huge fan of independent bottling. Some of them can be fantastic, but from my experience, when you get ones that you've never heard of, more often than not they can be not as good as what you can get in official bottlings. But I'm really liking this whisky. The palate actually follows through on that slightly Ardbeg-y note that we were getting from the nose quite well. You've got a really nice sourness to this whisky, some lovely lemon and grapefruit notes, sort of like smoked grapefruit, which is something that I quite often get from an Ardbeg 10. Also a rather nice mineral oiliness, some more wet wool notes. Let's just have a look to see what else I've written down here. Ashy, more lemon notes on the palate, and hot road tar. You know, on a hot day when you're either going past somewhere where they're doing roadworks or when it gets really hot and the road tar actually starts to melt, getting a little bit of that smell carrying through on the palate of this whisky. As for the finish, it's actually a long finish, quite sour and oily, quite an ashiness coming through again, and quite a bit of that fresh chili pepper note as well. I'm interested to see if there's anyone out there who has tried this or is trying this today. If you don't like chili pepper, how are you getting on with this whisky? Because it hasn't necessarily got the heat of chili pepper, but it has got that flavour, and I'll be interested to see anyone that doesn't like their spicy food and chili peppers, what do you think of this whisky? Just having a look what's actually inside this box. It's like an egg carton material inside. It's just being naughty there, trying to see the next one along. Just wondering if there's any red-topped bottles in there. Because if we do get any red-topped samples in this advent calendar, we know that they're shifting really old stock on us. Not that I care, as long as it's good stuff. So I know that I said that I wasn't going to give grades to any of these whiskies from the advent calendar, because I feel that it's just not fair to assess something based on just 30 millilitres, and I wanted to keep it a little bit formal. But I must say that I'm so impressed with this one, and if I was going to give it a grade based on just this small tasting, it's going to be a B+ at least. It's far better than I expected. As to where I think this is from, because being from the Character of Islay Whisky Company, it must be an Islay single malt. Or does it say single malt? Yes, it's a single malt. It's not a blended malt or anything like that. There are definitely a lot of Ardbeg notes in this one, but I don't think it is from Ardbeg. I would say this is probably one of your young, slightly more fruity and spirity, slightly ashier whiskies from Kalila. Other distilleries it could be from, I really can't see this being Bunnahabhain, definitely not Bowmore. It's not going to be Lagavulin. Realistically, it's not going to be an Ardbeg, because you're not going to get Ardbegs in something like this. So I think this is probably, as a lot of mystery malts from Islay are these days, I think it's going to be a Kalila. As for the age, it says 10 years old on the sample bottle, and I think this whisky tastes exactly that. Tastes not a year, more or less. It tastes like it is a good 10-year-old whisky. Curiosity has got the better of me. I'm going to have to look this up, this Aerolite Lindsay, and find out exactly what it is. So, Aerolite Lindsay is as random as it sounds. It's actually an anagram of 10-year-old Islay. I don't think I would have guessed that in a million years. And it's £45 a bottle, and it seems to be an Atom Brands product. So Atom Brands is the company behind Master of Malt, so this is kind of one of their own whiskies that they've released. I've also found something here, and I'm not sure how official it is, but it says that the whisky is matured in a mix of 70% bourbon casks and 25% Spanish oak quarter casks. So quarter casks made from fresh Spanish oak, that's a bit unusual. But I'm actually wondering if that Spanish oak quarter cask could be getting some oak spice from that, and perhaps that's where I'm getting that chili pepper note from. Whatever it is, I can't express enough how much I like this whiskey, and I think I'm going to have to keep an eye out for Aerolite Lindsay or the Character of Islay Whisky Company products in future. So please enjoy day 1 of your Whisky Advent Calendar and let me know what you think. Hopefully you got the same one as me. Let me know what you thought of Aerolite Lindsay. Cheers.